This is Black Writers Read. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for the premiere episode of Season 6 of Black Writers Read. My name is Nicole Young-Martin, and I'm the founder, producer, and host for the series. How was your summer? Mine was packed both personally and for Black Writers Read. I had multiple speaking gigs, which had me on the road a lot. I taught middle schoolers. Yeah, I taught middle schoolers ages 10 through 14 and learned a whole lot about myself in a really cool summer academy program. I saw some great shows on Broadway, including Audra McDonald and Gypsy, which for folks who know me very well know how big of a deal this is for me. I worked a lot in theater. I served as an associate producer for the world premiere of Belly. For folks who watch Recasting the Culture, I had an opportunity to speak with Dr. Haile Ishe Cole, who was the playwright and producer on that work. You can check it out on YouTube. And I began working as a producer on a commission work for a Connecticut-based historical site. I work for a company called Plays in Place, and we were hired to do a commission work on one of the historic sites that's based in Connecticut. Currently, it's in development, and then next year we'll be premiering it in the summer. It's a year-long process, and I'm really excited to be a part of the creative team for that. I hosted several folks on Recasting the Culture, which now serves as the summer voice of Black Writers Read, where I get an opportunity to chat with friends and other cool innovators about their work. I am also excited to announce that I welcomed on an associate producer on Black Writers Read, Candace De Leon. Her and I have known each other since our days at Wayne State University in the theater program, and we've worked together in the past. I'm extremely excited to have her join me on this particular journey. So know that you have two of us now, and know that Black Writers Read will be in good hands this season. Oh, yeah. And also, too, for folks, if you have been following me since I think probably season 2 or something like that, I am still dealing with a chronic cough and also a tick. Fun times. The only difference now is that I've seen a handful of specialists and doctors. And guess what? I continue to not have an answer nor a treatment plan. But anywho, I hope to be able to get through this next season of Black Writers Read, because I have so much for you, including 30 guests, some that I've been following for a long time. I've owned their books for a long time. Some I've studied in undergraduate and grad school. And then one of them is a really close friend of mine, whom I like to call my University of Michigan Wolverines big brother. So I'm extremely excited for the season ahead. So let's get started with episode 1. Black Writers Read showcases, celebrates, and honors the words, work, and traditions of Black writers from across the country, across genres, across experiences, and across the African diaspora. Black Writers Read is a behind-the-scenes conversation into the craft and what it means to create as a Black author in today's society. Since starting the series during the summer of 2020, we've hosted 90 authors representing over 15 genres from 6 countries and 26 states. Our platform includes the live stream interviews, which you're here now, the audio podcast, book clubs, and curriculum integration assistance. Find us online at blackwritersread.com. Today, we welcome back Shannon Luders-Manuel, who joined us in season 1 to chat about the beginnings of her debut memoir, which we'll chat about during this episode. And she's also a dear friend of mine. Shannon Luders-Manuel is the author of the memoir, The One Who Loves Me, a memoir growing up biracial in a Black and white world, published by Lawrence Hill Books, an imprint of Chicago Review Press, which was released in February of 2025. Shannon holds a Master of Arts in English Literature from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, that's how we met, and has written extensively about race with bylines in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and the Los Angeles Review of Books, among others. In 2015, she wrote the viral For Harriet essay, What It Means to Be Mixed Race During the Fight for Black Lives. Luders-Manuel presented her master's thesis at the Critical Mixed Race Studies Conference in Chicago in 2012 and was a featured writer at the 2014 Remix Festival in Los Angeles. She performed sensitivity reads for major publishers, providing feedback on Black and mixed race characters and issues. Today, we'll chat about her memoir, The One Who Loves You. As a child, Shannon Luders-Manuel felt like an outsider to every environment she entered. Born to a Black father and white mother who separated when she was 3, Luders-Manuel grew up in her white extended family in a largely white areas of California. Throughout her life, she yearned to understand her charismatic, transient father, whose promises were rarely kept, who struggled with alcohol and violence, and whose love she desperately needed. How could she find a place among two worlds, white and one black, when she felt so different? Luders-Manuel sought guidance in Baptist religion, becoming a born-again Christian at age 14, and eventually found herself in an abusive relationship. When her father entered hospice care when she was just 24, wow, that's young, she became his caretaker despite their long estrangement and hoped to find connection while she still could. Instead, she learned that neither man nor God could give her the home she needed. She would have to build her own sense of self. The one who loves you eloquently speaks not only to mixed race individuals, but to anyone who struggles with being labeled by others and to those who seek to reconcile the most contradictory parts of their identities. To learn more about Shannon, please visit her website at shannonludersmanuel.com. Throughout the episode, I'll be sharing the link to her website and how to find her on Instagram. So, for those who are new to Black Writers Read, here's the format of our show. There will be an excerpt shared of the book, but we're going to do something a little bit different before I bring Shannon on. I am happy to read an excerpt from her book on her behalf. Then I will bring Shannon on to chat a little bit about the book. Then I'll open it up to Q&A for those who are joining us today. We typically have folks joining us on Facebook and YouTube. If you have a question, please feel free to enter it in the comment section on the platform you are joining us from today. I will monitor, compile the questions, and either pose them to our guests following the conversation or insert them during an appropriate time within our chat. So I'm actually going to read an excerpt from the book. I will be reading a little bit of Chapter 3, A Child's Christmas in Wales, 1985. And given the unique chapter title and many of the chapter titles, I actually have a question for Shannon about the titles. So here goes. One Saturday back in 1985, Mom dropped me off at Dad's new home for an overnight visit. Dad drove his ex-girlfriend Naomi and me to the large city park with Duante, a cousin on his side of the family who was 8 like me. I hung from the jungle gym rings just like I did at school, but this time I wasn't alone. Duante swung beside me in swim shorts and no shirt, looping his legs over the top of the bars. Duante, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, was a mini version of Dad with long legs and a chest that rippled even though it was mostly flat. But he was also a version of me. The few other people that I knew in Dad's family were old, but Duante and I stood at the same height, his darker body a mirror of mine. He was an automatic friend. In preschool, Mom had kept my hair in an afro. Now it came to the middle of my back like a poofy triangle, and Mom kept it in 2 big braids, except for the 2 poof balls at, at the top that Grandma made with scissors. Dad took out the braids and the puff balls and brushed out my hair into its triangle with the afro top. I'm trying to imagine what that looks like. He didn't like it when my hair wasn't free. Naomi flashed pictures of Duante and me as Dad stood by with a suave smile. Though she wasn't Dad's girlfriend anymore, they still cared about each other. When Duante and I were done with the bars, we headed out to a blue wagon with red reels set up on blocks. We climbed to the top, and Duante steered the invisible horse while I pumped my fist for being the best horse rider. With him, I didn't need to play Underground Railroad. Being a horse rider was so much better. We got to feel the sun in our bodies, the wind whistling through the oak trees, and we got to be on top of the world, not underneath it. It was my first experience with Black joy, simple happiness with another Black person in a nation that tried to keep us down. That day, instead of a white boy saying "ew" as he rode by me on a bicycle, I had a Black boy beside me validating my existence. As Naomi took more pictures, I imagined them making their way to Dad's wall so he wouldn't think to move away again. I glanced over at him every once in a while to make sure he hadn't evaporated like trick liquid on hot asphalt when you get too close to it on the road. Before we headed to the swimming pool, we had a picnic of fried chicken, watermelon, oyster crackers, and punch. Dad lit a cigarette and took a puff as he crossed one leg over the other and leaned forward to rest his elbow on his knee. He handed Naomi a cigarette and she held it carefully between her fingers. My dad often shifted between loquacity and silence, and today was a silent day. There were no stories about his exploits. Instead, he was regal, even in his thrift store ensemble of wide-leg jeans, a button-up tan shirt, and a brown faux leather peacoat. His eyes on me made me feel alive, like Pinocchio turning into a real boy or the Velveteen Rabbit becoming a real rabbit. Duante threw oyster crackers up in the air and tried to catch them in his mouth. Sometimes he won, but most times he didn't. I scarfed down more watermelon. The juice ran down my chin a little, and I wiped it away with the front of Naomi's blue shirt, which I put on over my rainbow bathing suit. The juice broke the heat and filled my stomach with air conditioner goodness. I watched the sun above us as it waved through the leaves. It teased me with its penchant for disappearing so slowly that darkness would eventually come without warning. Excuse me, there's that cough, y'all. Sorry, I'm battling it today. After we ate, Duante and I took turns running up the steps of the slide and tumbling into the pool. Normally, I didn't like the icy coldness of pools or the feeling of my bare skin on plastic slides. Excuse me. Oh my God, this interview is going to be good. Trust me, y'all. To crash at the bottom. But the slide was small and my dad was tall as he watched from his chair near the pool. Naomi jumped in and splashed Duante and me with water. She lifted me onto the concrete by the side of the pool and told me to jump on her shoulders. She paraded me this way and that as Duante made circles around us. When she put me back down, I dog paddled to the other side of the pool, then put my head underwater and swam back like a frog. I couldn't hear anything except the water as it rushed past my ears. My arms reached out in the front of me in a quick motion and then pushed to the sides as they moved me forward. On land, I got nowhere fast. My shoes hit concrete with uncertainty as I followed someone who told me where to go. But underwater, my body floated with just the power of my arms and legs as they guided me to my destiny. All of a sudden, I felt something move in my stomach. It sloshed just like the pool water, except it was inside me. I grabbed my stomach to bend forward as much as I could. Naomi guided me to the edge of the pool where I saw Dad crouched down with his hands out to pull me forward. He gripped gently around my arms and led me to the pool's edge. I took a gulp of the air and then threw up watermelon juice all over the concrete, mixed with seeds for good measure. It was the very best day. Now, thank you for your patience as I coughed and read through that. Now, I'd love to welcome Shannon Luders-Manuel back to the virtual stage. Hi, Shannon. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, hello.
Hi, welcome back.
Thank you so much for reading that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm going to read this. And what's funny for folks, I also listened to the audiobook, so I was just like, I'm going to read this. So I was hearing the voice of the narrator.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's me. Do not listen to that. Which narrator is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She
So thank you so much for being on today. So for folks, back in season 1, we talked about the beginnings of a memoir. And here we are. We're talking about the actual published book, which came out in February. So I'm extremely excited to talk about the book. And I also want to preface that Though we are talking about memoir, which is creative nonfiction based on someone's life, I try to keep questions to craft. I do
Mhm,
have one question, though, that
mhm,
I believe is more personal and self reflective because it leads into a mechanic of craft.
mhm.
So, the first question I have for you, Shannon, is I love to start us off by asking, and a lot of these questions come from the fact that I followed the development of the book.
Right.
Why this specific title? The One Who Loves You, a memoir of growing up biracial in a black and white world.
Mhm.
How does it prepare the reader for the journey they'll take with you in your book?
So, my editor and I came up with the title together. Um, it was called, first, it was called Black Prince, which was an homage to my dad. But then we wanted it more focused on me and my journey. So it still is kind of an homage to my dad, but less, less directly so. But actually, so when we were trying to find a title, she suggested that I look through my dad's letters because, so as you know, my dad's letters are peppered throughout the book, like word for word. And so one of the things he says in a letter is that he's the one he's like uh, Robert Conrad Manuel, the one who loves you. And so that ended up working well as the title. So and then not only is it subtly, directed to him, but it's also me searching for throughout the book. I'm searching for love, and I'm sorry about your cough. um, I'm searching for love throughout the book in all these different places, and in all these different scenarios with church and relationships and in my different family units. And then the the subtitle, we just wanted it to be really specific to oh to really show the reader, what the book was going to be about, so that they would know that it was going to be, you know, a book about a biracial person. And the black and white is both literal, that I'm in a black world and a white world, but also kind of like experiencing black and white thinking in different areas. So, yeah, that's what we wanted to get across.
Yeah, because I thought the title, and thank you for the for acknowledging
Yeah.
the call.
Yeah.
This sucks. This sucks because it
Yeah.
impedes on my life, and I'm trying to push through, but my body is like,
Yeah.
stop, and I'm like, I can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
because the one who loves you, the other thing that I was thinking about for the title, and then I'll go to the next question is, and thanks for referencing a question that I have coming up about the archive, but
Yeah.
the one who loves you, because I know, and again, for folks who are just joining us, I've known Shannon for a bit, so I read the book and I know Shannon, so there's like a couple of
Yeah.
reference points. Um, I know the relationship you had with your mother, your maternal grandmother, and your
Mhm.
father, and also your past marriage, and so
Mhm.
it made me go, and also too, in terms of dealing with identity, it made me go, the one who loves you, it could be either of those people or yourself. So that's
Right.
what I was thinking about for the title too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. The next question I have for you is, and it was so funny when I started reading it, when I looked at the table of contents, I was like, and I saw the titles, I was like, yep. This is Shannon.
Mhm.
Many of the chapters in The One Who Loves You are named after well-known books. Many of them we would have read in school. They are each joined by a year of your life. What is the significance behind these titles and the adjoining years of each section?
So yeah, so each chapter title is a book, and I basically just wanted to do something interesting. I was either going to do something interesting or just have chapter 1, chapter 2, because I didn't want them to be boring. And also, towards the end of the book, I mentioned that I have this job and someone's asking me if I'm reading all the classics, so it's a little bit of a play on that. And then just because yeah, I'm just kind of like focused on literature, I guess. But also yeah. So when I first decided to do the book titles, um, I wasn't as specific as I ended up being. So I was focused more on the titles themselves matching the content of the chapter without thinking about the content of the book, if that makes sense. So I can't think of a specific example that I changed, but I'm in a critique group, and so when they looked at it, they were like, "No, you need to make sure that the actual book that you're referencing makes sense for that chapter. That it's not just the title." So it was actually pretty difficult. And to be honest, I haven't read every single book that I reference. I've read most of them, but not all of them because it was too hard otherwise, I have read most of them though. But so for instance, and this one I have read, and it's one that I really like, The Catcher in the Rye. So I use Catcher in the Rye for the chapter that's about my freshman year in high school. And in that chapter, I go through a lot of dissatisfaction with school and a lot of racism in the school, and like teachers thinking that I am not meant to do well and just being written off. And then I also talk about my my very protective relationship with my baby sister, so it has these strong correlations with the book itself. So each chapter of my book does have that connection to the book title that I referenced, if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense, and I'm not going to hold it against you that you didn't read all the books because one, it's a lot of books.
Yeah.
But also, it's funny. I'm now an English teacher, and in high
Mhm,
school, I'm really good at faking it. I would read
mhm.
a couple of pages in the book, and
Uh-huh.
I come to class and still do a really good close reading. I do that now as faculty too. So I'm like, for Black Writers Read, I try to read the whole book because I'm like, I want to be able to fully
Yeah,
engage with my guests, but also too, I'm
yeah,
like, I love y'all work, so I want to be able to read it all.
yeah, yeah.
The next question that I have for you, you used a variety of source materials to write this book, which I love that there's something at the very beginning.
Mhm,
It talks about this so that people are prepared. So you use journal entries from a wide span of decades and also family and friends stories. What was it like using a mix of the archive you've created of your life and that of what I like to call a live archive one of stories told to you by those who are either currently alive or who were alive when you first heard the story? And then which of these components led the start of the writing process?
Um, I don't think any of the components started the process. And do you mean started the process of this book?
Yeah, like what of the archive that you had access to in terms of the stories and your own stories were you like that you read first or went to first to start writing the book?
Um, Nothing for starting writing the book. That was just my own memory. Oh no, that's not true. That's not true. So, it's a little convoluted, and I think it's related a little to a question you have later, but that's okay, I'm sure. But so I had written like fictional renditions like when I was younger about like my whole mixed race journey and being like a stepchild and stuff like that. But like as far as like the book as it like really came out, with my dad as the focus and everything. Um, I referenced the journal that I kept when he was dying. Yeah. So, and that one it was a little more sparse than some of my other ones just because, I was going through so much at the time and it was kind of hard to, write in the midst of it. But yeah, I did reference that journal um, as I wrote, and I don't think I was even thinking of it as starting the memoir at that time. I was just writing, like writing, like maybe it was going to be like an essay. I'm not sure what I thought it was going to be. I was just kind of doing it for myself to get it down. But yeah, I referenced my journal. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is an aside question. I hope it's okay that I ask this, but I'm asking this
Hmm.
because it's something that I know.
Hmm.
Given that you started the book after your father passed, I believe you told
Hmm.
me that you had conversations with your mom, getting
Hmm.
some stuff on your dad.
Yeah.
How were those conversations like um given that your father was deceased and you were using your mom as a reference point?
Yeah, my mom was extremely helpful. Like I wouldn't have there were a lot of different facets um that came together that if I hadn't had those different parts, the book wouldn't have worked. And getting information from my mom, that was one of them for sure. And so she was just a wealth of information. And I'm really appreciative to her for that. So she just helped me a lot. She was just really open about like their relationship and, you know, the good and the bad. And, you know, um, yeah, she was extremely helpful. The only part that was really hard for her was when we he moved around a lot um in like Sacramento. Like this was like after um they had separated, but she would like drive me to his house, you know, and so this was like 3 hours away and stuff. And so I had letters from him and they had his return address on them. And so we drove to the different houses, just to like try to stir up memories and stuff. And I wasn't thinking about her, like how it would be for her in terms of that. And so that was the only thing for her that it was like that was stressful for her, you know. And so I was like, "Oh no, I'm so sorry," you know. But yeah, she just helped a lot, you know. Just yeah.
I feel like that's a movie in itself.
Yeah.
Like the going through the process of writing the book, traveling with your mom to these places. And
Yeah.
also for folks, I hope it's not a spoiler, that your parents separated when you were significantly younger. And so I bet a lot of this was a very interesting data
Mm,
point for her.
yeah.
So I'm like,
I don't think it's
how
a
did,
spoiler because it's like on the back cover, you know, or
well,
on the
true.
inside flap. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm
Yeah.
like, screenwriters out there, I think you have a story.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
And speaking of screenwriting, I would love to talk about character creation, especially given that the memoir is creative nonfiction.
Mhm.
Can you talk about how you created your dad, the Black Prince, and also yourself, and why was it important to you to center your dad and your relationship with him so prominently in this book?
Yeah. So when I was first writing like fictional iterations of myself growing up, like it just didn't have any kind of like reason, you know what I mean? It was more like, okay, you know, what's the purpose or whatever. And then you know, when I started, so my dad, you know, died when I was 24, and that's not a, you know, that's not giving away anything either. It's also on the inside flap. Um, so it was like maybe 3 years after he died or something. I wanted to write about it for myself just to kind of process it because it was such a huge thing. I spent 2 weeks taking care of him in a house I'd never been to, you know, and this was before cell phones. This was before, you know, I just felt completely alone. And I was taking care of him like 24/7. I had no idea what I was doing. And it was like the most stressful 2 weeks of my life. And so I just like wrote about it just to like, yeah, just to process it. And also because like while our relationship was difficult, like I didn't want him to slip away, you know? And I didn't want him to slip away from me, and I also wanted to kind of preserve him for other people even though he wasn't like a big figure, you know, it still he still felt important, you know? Um, so that's how I ended up writing about him. And I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah, it was, and you're definitely on that trail because the question was about creating him and you as a character.
Oh, right, right.
And I'll preface with this too, and I don't think this is giving anything away. I love how you lay out the
Mhm,
chunks of describing him and
mhm.
getting us to an important characteristic of him that
Yeah,
carries throughout the time that you had with him in your life.
yeah,
And I love how you set up, like describing him as this very like iconic figure to
yeah,
yes. So I
yeah,
hope that
yeah. Okay, thank you. I completely forgot the question. So, it was really important to me to show all sides of him, because you know, he struggled with alcohol and he struggled with violence and he struggled with being a compulsive liar. But he also like really loved me, you know, he was like he did a lot of good in the community. He was really smart, you know, and so I wanted to show like all sides of him, you know. So that was it was really important for me to like show his multifacetedness in the book. And I partly did that through having his letters in the book so he could speak for himself. And then for me, it was important for me to show my my kind of how I had my head in the clouds, kind of like for me to show my um dreaminess, like my innocence, um my how I was different from other people, most other people my age, in terms of like I was very young for my age. I was very like whimsical and like, I wanted to belong, so I kind of like I made sure that came through in the book a lot.
Yeah, and also too, and I think this leads really nicely into the next question. I have like maybe 2 or 3 more questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I I can't speak from this experience because I am African American of 2 Black parents, and I lived and grew up in Detroit, which at the time was predominantly Black, and I think it still is.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed this with several books, both fiction and nonfiction, of folks I've had on this podcast who are biracial, and they talk about like being the only one of them, and then grasping for a particularly like trying to like create their identity in the space of them being the only one, so they don't have
Mm-hmm.
anyone to emulate. Even if their parents were together,
Mm-hmm.
you're still very different.
Mm-hmm.
And now, and I hope I'm not committing malpractice with this, but now, because we have more multiracial couples, we're
Mm-hmm.
getting more multiracial children who are growing up with other multiracial children.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could easily see your book, and I hope that there is a future for this book.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that it can get into the hands of educators and also counselors who work with adults,
Mm-hmm.
because I know I've seen, even in media representation, I've seen a lot of this battle of how do I find and discover myself, given that there's no one else like me in my family, in my
Mm-hmm.
community. And
Yeah.
now we have instances where, like the summer when I taught for the middle school program, and there were siblings in the program, and there were siblings who are from multiracial homes and
Mm-hmm.
multiracial communities. So they may feel othered in a different way. So I
Mm-hmm.
do hope, this isn't necessarily a question, but kind of a preface to the next
Mm-hmm.
2 questions. I do hope um, that your book, because I know there was one, Brianna Wheeler, who I really want to put you in touch with. She
Oh yeah.
talks about how she wants her book to live on, given that it was an exploration about, actually very similar to you. It was an
Mm-hmm.
exploration of her Black identity, and it was coming through the perspective of an ancestor who fought in who was killed in the raid on Harper's Ferry. And so it's just so interesting, a lot of the parallels. And I'm also hearing, even though her book was fiction, I'm hearing a lot of S.E. Chambers' characters in Swift River, where you have the protagonist who's biracial, who is like growing up in a predominantly white space. She's the only one. She grew up with her mother, I believe, as an only child, and
Mm-hmm.
she's grabbing to relatives and things like that, and other things, trying to find her identity. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's an important genre that's happening right
Mm-hmm.
now
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
that I hope people call attention to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this question I ask, and I should have put this in my notes to you. I asked this question
Mm-hmm.
because of someone who gave you a quote for your book, and he's someone I recently started following, and I hope to read his book at some point. And I hope I don't pronounce his name incorrectly. Nabil Ayers.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why this question comes up, because he gives a really nice quote to your book.
Mm-hmm.
who are other writers, especially those in creative nonfiction world that you look up to? Whose works did you refer to as you began exploring writing your own memoir?
So when I began, there was like nobody. I mean, there was nobody mixed race. Well, okay, I will say there was nobody mixed race who was a memoirist, aside from Barack. Yeah. There might have been some like people who were not mainstream that I didn't know about, but like, so yeah, so who I looked up to was obviously Barack. Dreams from My Father, that was a big one. And then it was Jennifer Lauk who wrote Blackbird. Cause she,
Oh.
yeah, cause she wrote about, she was adopted and then her adoptive parents both died. And then she was like shifted around with family and stuff. And then also Maya Angelou. Um, yeah, because she was like the first Black memoirist that I read. Um, yeah, so they were like my big influences, for sure. Yeah, they were the biggest. And then also, oh gosh, I always forget her name like on the spot for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, let me see if I can probe you. Is this Rebecca Walker?
No.
Okay.
It's a white person.
Yes, you're like it's a white person. There's a lot of white women. I can't
Okay.
help you there, but we
Yeah.
know it's a white. We know it's a white person.
It's okay. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just her writing style. That's it. That's it. It's Anita Shrev.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it was her that the pilot's wife. I read The Pilot's Wife, and then that's what prompted me to start writing about my dad. And all it had to do with was the writing style. That's it. And
Nice.
even when I was writing my book, if like I felt like stuck with like how things were sounding, I would just read some of The Pilot's Wife. And all it had to do with was the language. Because like she and I write similarly, though like
Mhm.
I feel like I'm here and she's here. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I totally get it. This question,
Yeah.
though we tend to talk heavily about craft on Black Writers Read, I think it's important to insert this question, especially given some of the mechanics of memoir as a genre, both for the author and for their audience. This question is deeply personal, which I kind of gave people a forewarning content, insertion at the beginning. In The One Who Loves You, this notion of fitting boxes and identity exploration emerges fairly strong. How did you find yourself? When did you reach the point in your life where you were firm in the way you wanted to identify? And how does this journey show up in the book?
um I think so. I always identified as biracial mixed. And then, interestingly, and this shows up in the book, I feel like, though I don't state it specifically, but it was actually when I met you. And
Yes! Yes!
yeah. So okay, so when I went to grad school, is when I made my first like Black friends, really, which is insane. But but yeah, so I was brought into like a group of Black friends when we were all like in different area different areas of the humanities, but it was like all, we were in the English department and the African American history
Yep, African American studies. We were all over the place
studies.
on campus.
Yeah.
Social justice education.
Yeah.
We even had somebody from was it sport management? Yeah, we did. Who was
Did
in the
we?
doctoral
Okay.
program? Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like a few of us. It wasn't anything like formal, but we just hung out. And so I think that was my first, when it kind of, not officially, but I kind of felt more Black. And so I mean, it didn't change from mixed race, but I didn't state this, but I felt more like Black biracial, so it wasn't just biracial, it was also Black. And then I would say that, during the heightened awareness of police brutality, 2015 and everything, I would say that's when I started stating, started like using, like sometimes hyphenating, like, okay, I'm Black biracial. Instead of just saying biracial, I would say like Black biracial. Especially because, biracial can be anything, you can be like Chinese and Dutch, or, like you can be mixed with anything. So I just felt like Black biracial was like more specific, so I felt like it was like more asserting that, like, I'm Black, I felt more, I felt like I had more of a, I felt more comfortable is not the right word, but I felt like I had more community, like more, yeah, more connected to that identity than I was before. Because it's not like I never felt Black, but it was more like not connected to anything, like, yeah, like as I say in my book, like what I knew about Blackness was history and what I saw on TV. It wasn't something that like I interacted with in person.
Yeah, and that UMass Amherst Blackness, just to insert myself before I pose the last question. Like, and it's so, which it meant so much to have to be mentioned in the acknowledgments, and recognizing other people from our grad school experience
Yeah.
mentioned in the acknowledgments. But like,
Yeah.
for folks who aren't from the region or know of the region, this part of New England is hyper white, and it's this weird hyper progressive white. I call it Birkenstocks white, where, and Birkenstocks are really expensive. I have a pair. Where it's like, it's this mix of, I want to be progressive only to a point. I want to be progressive to protect my family, but everybody else, no, not for you. And there's like little tinges of like passive aggressive racism. There's a bunch of Karens that live up here and a bunch of Beckys. It's weird. And all of, like, a good chunk of the Black people that live in the region have a connection to the university. Either they grew up here because their parent taught at the university, they came here to go to the university. So like there's some connection to the university. And also Amherst is a college town, so you have a certain level of intellect. So when we would all get together because in most instances we were the invisibles. And when we were together, we were the invisibles unite. So we had more power. So we were loud, and we may, have behaved in ways that we typically don't behave when we're in those spaces isolated. And so Blackness, I can say for me, was even more, because now I live, and Connecticut is so different. I live an hour and 20 minutes from I still work. I teach at UMass now. And like, it's so weird to be an hour and 20 minutes away from campus. And it's so different in Connecticut. It's so weird. And I'm like, we're a border state. And it's so weird. But like I've always been pro-black, but I became blacker being, at UMass. So I can imagine.
Uh-huh.
And so every time we were all together, from what I'm remembering, it was always around food. It was always around music. It was always around that. It was always
Mhm.
around some like multiple ethnic components together.
Uh-huh.
So it was kind of like we gave you the super black cape whenever
Yeah.
we were together. And I just remember that Thanksgiving, and you talked about this on season 1 of Black Writers Read, where you talked about having mac and cheese. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, it was so great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just like, I like this area. It's just, it's so special because, excuse me, and I'm being so gross, I even had to blow my nose on air. It's the land of the misfit toys, where
Yeah.
we're like, not only are we of marginalized communities, we're even more marginalized within our communities, because some of us were the first to go to college, first to go to graduate school. We're these like high intellects where
Mhm.
you could only talk to the few, but then we have our moments where we like listen to rap and hip hop and go to McDonald's and all, so we've created our own we have to create our own little enclave. And
Mhm.
I'm glad that that was such an
Mhm.
affirming experience for you, because UMass is an interesting place.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like what I experienced in the classroom there was like so different from what I experienced in undergrad, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the last question that I have for you, and not to put words in your mouth, but I'm
Mhm.
hoping that your response goes in the direction that I think it does, because it's also too, not to, but I think it's important for folks to kind of know the diverse worlds that writers work in.
Mhm.
The last question that I have for you, Shannon, is, and feel free to answer how you like. What is next for you, and how can the Black Writers Read community support you on this journey?
Yeah. Um So I'm not sure what's next for me. So I had Nicole read for me because I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome when my shortly after my book came out, which is why I had Nicole read for me. Because reading is difficult for me right now, as is writing. So I did have a second book planned um, before this book was even finished. But now that's on hiatus. And this book was published with a small press. So, how um, people can support this book is to buy it and read it and review it and share it and yeah, all that good stuff. So it's yeah, and then just coming back on here is just such an honor, and Nicole's such a great friend, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Because I didn't want to put your business out there, but also I
Yeah.
wanted folks to know, like, and this is something that continues to come up on each episode, and what I'm learning about folks is that it is hard out here, and it's even
Hmm.
harder when you're dealing with a different life circumstance.
Hmm.
And the reason why it's important to purchase books, like, for example, I just started teaching this semester, and I had students ask me, are there PDF copies of books? And I was like, for free. And also people want me to use open source, and I might lose my job for saying this, but I said to my students, I had this long conversation, especially about playwriting. I said, in theater, the playwright, even though they're the foundation of theater, they are the most invisible, in that you see the actors, you even see, even though you don't meet the designers, you see the designs, you hear
Hmm.
the sound, you see the lights, and you see the direction. And sometimes you'll get bios of all these people, photos of these people. They'll come and do like talkbacks and all these things. sometimes you don't meet the playwright in that same way. And
Mhm.
also, playwrights nowadays do not make a lot of money. Like, they have to hustle doing multiple gigs at once. There's one particular playwright that I know of who now writes for television and film and also teaches. And
Mhm.
so I want people to know the world that creatives exist in to be
Mhm.
able to make a living. Like, it is
Mhm.
extremely important. Like, I even went on Instagram Live this summer. Like, I just
Mhm.
I like kind of not necessarily went off, but I talked constructively
Yeah.
about why it's important to support independent media, especially
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
I don't have to state it. People, hopefully
Mhm.
you know it. Hopefully you don't live under like 50 rocks and like you're
Mhm.
like the ostrich, bury your head in the sand. But independent media, especially now, since not only the banning of books, and we don't have to go into the conversation here because other guests have done this where they've talked about how how book sales, early book sales and all that, like, keep the book getting printed and keep it in existence. And
Mhm.
so here's Shannon's website. Boom. ShannonLudersManuel.com. Also, too, you can purchase the book on Black Writers Read has a bookshop. You can purchase the book directly
Mhm.
from our bookshop link. And with the bookshop link, not only will your purchase go towards independent booksellers, but it'll also assist Black Writers Read and Shannon. Because I really want to keep your book in print. I do. Because I seriously can see the book being a reference point um, for folks who are therapists, counselors who work with folks on race and identity. Because I'm seeing
Mhm.
this show up so much in books written by people by actually our generation, I believe. Because I
Mhm.
think that Brianna and I are around the same age, and you're a little bit older, but not that much older, like maybe a couple of years. And I'm seeing
Mhm.
like this in this generation talking about like how, because I'm not gonna lie, I had interesting reference points. I saw a lot of people who looked like me in
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
neighborhood, in my school.
Mhm.
People knew how to do my hair, like all
Mhm.
those things. And so for folks who are biracial, mixed race, multiracial, it's like
Yeah.
yeah, like I go back to, there was this episode, what was it? Was it Blackish or was it
Mhm.
the show, the prequel that came out where Rainbow was a kid? And I remember her and her siblings were going to get their hair done. It was a hot mess. And I was just like, and no one knew what, even now, which my hairstylist, she's biracial and she like purposefully learned how to do everybody's hair because she's just like,
Mhm.
a client's a client. I hate that people specialize in these different
Yeah.
ways. But I so see, and especially now with Barack's book, which actually I've read all of his books except for the one. And even though this is irrelevant, I love telling this story because I'm looking at the book right now. But I remember when A Promised Land came out, I
Uh-huh.
pre-ordered it. I was super
Mhm.
excited because I read his first two books and they were awesome. Girl, the box got dropped on the porch. I was like, what is that? It was all big and I opened the book and it was like 700 pages. I was like, what? And I was like, okay, Obama, I'm gonna need you to stop talking. And then I was like, maybe I'll listen to it on Audible. I got the audiobook. The audiobook is 29 hours.
Whoa. Oh my gosh.
Which also too, your audiobook, it's a really good listen because you can listen to it in a day because I think it's what, like 20, a little over 20 hours. You can
Cool.
listen to, and I listened to it in a day and it was just
Oh,
it was such a beautiful read. So folks,
yeah.
support this book however way you can, please.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So Shannon, thank you so much for being on. It's a lovely journey to go from, hi, I've written all these essays,
Yeah.
to I now have a book. And I
Yeah.
remember it being, being this idea. So it's really nice
Yeah.
to be able to have something in print now.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole book.
And can you talk a little bit before we wrap up? Can you talk a little bit about the photo on the front of the book? Because it's so cute.
Yeah, yeah. So it's me and my dad at the Rose Garden in San Jose. So
Nice.
yeah, somewhere he liked to take me during our visits. So yeah.
And also too, and I love how you make it a point to have your dad's voice inserted. But here comes the educator in me. This book is also really important for fatherhood in general. Because
Yeah.
I do remember even in the stories that you told me, like how much your father really worked to show up for you. And I was just like, yeah, it's really special.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Nice.
And my mom made sure of that too.
Yes. That's awesome. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Shannon, thank you so much for being on today. It was
Yeah.
great
Thank
catching
you.
up briefly. I need
Yeah.
to because I was saying this to someone the other day, I'm like, I need to reach out to people more than what I do.
It's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Especially given like just the pace of the world and also now being a full-time freelancer because of adjuncting is freelancing. It's like I can barely keep up with my own world. Like it was so funny.
Yeah.
The other day teaching class, I was looking for stuff, couldn't find anything. I was talking to the student, knocked over my coffee, knocked over my water, was
Oh
late
no.
for the next class. I was just like, what is happening? And then the next day, the same thing happened. I'm like, why
Oh
is
no.
this Groundhog's Day? Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
So I'll take you off. I'm going to wrap up. And then
Okay.
if you and I can check in
Sure.
briefly before you go for the rest of your afternoon.
Sure.
Cool. Thank you so much, Shannon.
Okay. Thank you.
So thank you all so much for joining us for the first episode of season 6 of Black Writers Read. I will be back next week, Sunday, September 14th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Shonda Buchanan, who will be talking about her memoir and her latest book. Oh my God, I'm so excited about this. The Lost Songs of Nina Simone. This is such a beautiful book. So excited to talk with her next week. So Black Writers Read by subscribing to my YouTube channel, where many of you are joining us from today, or the audio podcast, which is available on Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify, and Amazon Music. Also, feel free to drop a review of Black Writers Read on one of those platforms as you're there, which this makes it easier for others to find us, and the feedback helps me to curate the series. Reviews help so much. If you are able, please support Black Writers Read on Patreon. We're on Patreon under blackwritersread.com. By supporting us in these various ways, you're helping to sustain the platform, which is independently produced and self-funded. Visit blackreaders.com to learn more about the podcast. Thank you so much, viewers, for joining us today, and more importantly, for ensuring that Black authors continue to matter. See you next week.